latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is brought to you by In the Know with Craig Bolanos, powered by VestGen Wealth Partners, Sunday morning at 10 on AM 560 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. A number of Senate Republicans are squawking about the big, beautiful bill, at least the House version of it. There are some red lines that they won't cross, so they say right now. And so what will that look like? What the Senate is willing to pass and what can then pass in reconciliation. Big spenders in both caucuses, in both chambers. Rand Paul, not one of them. For him, as he explained to Shannon Bream on Fox News Sunday this weekend, the debt ceiling raise, red line. Here's why.
Factor into your calculus whether or not what you do in the Senate can get back through the House.
You know, the bigger a bill, the more it includes, the more difficult it is to get everybody to agree to things. I supported the tax cuts in 2017. I support making them permanent, so I support that part of the bill. I support spending cuts. I think the cuts currently in the bill are wimpy and anemic, but I still would support the bill, even with wimpy and anemic cuts, if they weren't going to explode the debt. The problem is the math doesn't add up. They're going to explode the debt by, the House says $4 trillion. The Senate's actually been talking about exploding the debt $5 trillion. This year in September, when our fiscal year ends, the deficit will be about $2.2 trillion. Now, people used to always say, the Republicans would say, well, that's Bidenomics, that's Biden spending levels. When March, every Republican, virtually every Republican other than me, voted to continue the Biden spending levels, which are going to give us a $2.2 trillion deficit. Now, if you increase the debt ceiling $4 to $5 trillion, that means they're planning on $2 trillion this year and more than $2 trillion next year. That's just not conservative. So I've told them if they strip out the debt ceiling, I'll consider, even with the imperfections, voting for the rest of the bill. But I can't vote to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. There's got to be someone left in Washington who thinks debt is wrong and deficits are wrong and wants to go in the other direction. The idea that we're going to explode deficits, and the projections are now looking at over $3 trillion in deficits over the next 10 years, I think is just, not a serious proposal.
Senator Ron Johnson, our friend from the Cheesehead State, continued. I mean, basically he said something very similar to what he said on our show. But I thought he had a good line that would make a good bumper sticker or talking point at the end here. He was on CNN this weekend.
President Obama averaged about $910 billion of deficits per year. President Trump in his first 3 years averaged about $810. Then COVID hit, over $3 trillion in deficit. It should have ended there. We should have immediately returned to a pre-pandemic level spending, but President Biden averaged $1.9 trillion of deficits over his 4 years. And according to CBO, those deficits now average $2.2 trillion over the next 10 years. We'll add $22 trillion. And I'm sorry, the House bill would probably add, I've calculated $4 trillion. You're saying you have these independent analysts saying it's 3.3 to 4 trillion. I agree with that. We have to reduce the deficit, and so we need to focus on spending. So you don't defeat the deep state by funding it.
You don't defeat the deep state by funding it. It's axiomatic, isn't it? Stephen Moore, economist, author of The Trump Economic Miracle and the Plan to Unleash Prosperity Again, co-authored with Art Laffer. Stephen Moore, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, they're not wrong, are they?
Good morning, guys. Well, I'm going to put Rand Paul down as a no.
Yeah, well, he's not going to be changing his mind.
Well, unless you do something on the debt ceiling raise, which is...
Yeah, right. So, and by the way, Rand is one of my best friends in the Senate and the one I admire just about more than anyone else. I'm frustrated by the fact that there aren't real spending cuts in this bill. I think I may have mentioned this last week on the show, but I want to repeat it. So under the current baseline, that projection of what if we do nothing, we will spend roughly $85 trillion over the next decade. $85 trillion. That's an unfathomably large number. Now, under the evil, mean, spirited, cold, heartless Republican budget, instead of spending $85 trillion, we'll spend, ready for this, $83 trillion. So it's not much of a dime's worth of difference, and the spending cuts are not there. The media keeps pounding them for, women with, pregnant women aren't going to get prenatal care, and rural hospitals are going to have to shut down, and kittens will be killed, and all of this stuff. But the truth is, there really aren't very many spending cuts in this, and they should be serious about making dramatic cuts. I mean, there's $500 billion a year of waste and fraud in the federal budget. $500 billion of fraudulent payments. So if my math is right, if you just get rid of all the fraud, you save $5 trillion over 10 years. Now, the only thing I disagree with what Ron Johnson said is, we've got to cut, our way out of this. But the truth is that what's really the most important thing is growing the economy, because if we get the economy to grow at 3 to 3.5%, which has been the average growth rate since the end of World War II, you do start to bend that curve down, and the debt becomes less and less of a burden. So people like myself and Larry Kudlow and Steve Forbes and Laffer, we want to make sure that we pass the best tax bill possible that grows the economy and brings the debt down through growth.
I appreciate that. But something Rand Paul said in the context of his debt ceiling red line is, this pushes off a debt ceiling raise past the 26 election, and it's really cowardly.
Funny how that happens, isn't it?
Right. Well, it's really cowardly, but it's also a good example of why this why Leviathan continues to expand geometrically,
right.
And how unserious so many Republicans are about reducing the size and scope of government, the rhetoric notwithstanding.
So can I interrupt you for 1 second? Here's one of the big problems. What we ought to do is just say, look, if you've got a business and you're losing $2 trillion a year, you better increase your revenues and you better, cut your expenditures. So one obvious thing that I think everybody would agree would make a lot of sense, why don't we just go across the board and cut every government program by 10%? Okay. Now, could you live with that, Dan?
Yes.
Amy, what do you think?
Well,
We're losing a lot of money. We're going to all have to suck in our stomach and tighten our belt and cut spending by 10%. Every agency, nobody's exempt from this. Except, guess what? The Republicans want to spend another $200-300 billion on the military, on the Pentagon. So they don't want to spend less money. They want to spend more money. The Pentagon is the biggest bureaucracy in the entire world. We talk a lot about government waste. There's no agency that wastes more money than the Pentagon. Believe me, it's 80,000 people work over there. I don't even have any idea. I don't think people have any idea what any of them do. I don't think the military knows what they do. So, there's no reason.
And to that point, so wait, Pete Hegseth is working with the Doge Boys. All these cabinet secretaries are working with the Doge Boys, and yet then you get to the appropriations part of the program, and all the savings and waste, fraud, and abuse that was identified by Doge gets kicked.
No, so that's a big problem, because if you look at the times that we actually cut the budget and actually balanced the budget, when of all people Bill Clinton was president and he had a Republican Congress, they cut everything. They cut military, they cut the excessive welfare benefits, and everything turned out well. We actually balanced the budget, but you have to get the deal that says Republicans will cut the defense budget if the Democrats will cut some of the social programs. But Republicans are not willing to make that deal. And again, I'm for a strong defense. I'm for a robust military, but we don't have to spend $1 trillion a year on the military.
And the other thing that's frustrating about this is, we get the short-term pain for long-term game argument. Republicans make it when it comes to tariffs, but they won't make it when it comes to spending.
Yeah, good point. It's a good point. I mean, listen, the budget is expected to, even this, every single year under the Republican budget, spending increases. I bet most people are surprised by that. What are you talking about? I thought they were going to throw everybody off of welfare, and then no. The budget increases every year. It just increases slightly smaller than it's supposed to spend, and these are these wicked spending cuts. It's very frustrating, and I would have a hard time look, I'm a big fan of getting this tax cut done. Here's another one. I know you're there in Illinois. I know that. I know you're there in the Chicago area. But why in the world should Chicagoans be able to deduct their state and local taxes off their federal taxes, Dan? I mean, you live there. If you guys live there, if you want to pay, Chicago taxes, which are through the roof, much higher than any other state except for California and New York, that's your right. But don't expect people in other states to subsidize your high taxes.
Yeah, that's not good. Well, one part of the big, beautiful bill that I love is cutting Medicaid for illegals. But people like Rosie O'Donnell with the Trump derangement syndrome losing her mind over that, put out a TikTok yesterday just, screaming to the high heavens. But that's what we voted for.
What did she say?
Oh, she was just that we have to help all the people that come to this country. Right. We can't discriminate against people who are here just trying to search for a better life.
Name again? What's this congresswoman's name again?
Yeah, right. I know.
What is I forget.
No.
What's her name?
Rosie O'Donnell, I said. Remember she fled to Ireland because Trump's president?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Okay. But here's what I want. Because, look, I was on CNN the other night, and they were just pounding me. Oh, my God, all these people are going to lose their Medicaid. And I said, look, you guys feel strongly about this, and one of them was a Democratic congressman. So I said, why don't you put a bill on the House floor that says we believe that every single that 10 million illegal immigrants should get free health care paid by the taxpayers. See how that goes. I mean, come on. I've been looking at the polling. 75% of Americans are against illegal immigrants getting welfare benefits like free health care. So put it on the Senate floor. Let's have a vote.
What's your handicapping of what happens in the Senate and reconciliation?
Oh, they're going to get it. They'll get a bill done. I don't know if they're going to add. So the problem is half the Republicans think this cuts too much, and then you've got a sensible number of people like Ron Johnson and Rand Paul are saying, well, it cuts way too little. So they're going to pass a bill. It's going to be mamby-pamby on the spending, and we will get this big, beautiful bill passed, I think, I'd like to see it by July 4th, but I think it'll be closer to Labor Day. But it will get done because it has to get done, because I always remind your listeners every week I'm on that this failure is not an option because you're facing a $4 trillion tax increase if it doesn't get done. But why can't they just match some of the tax reductions with spending cuts? I don't understand the logic, especially after Ron Johnson has a good point. You want to balance the budget? Just go back to the way we were spending before COVID.
Yeah, right. Those austere days of 2019, right?
Hey, Stephen, I wanted to ask you about Trump's delaying the EU tariffs until July 9th. Here we go again, where he's kicking the can down the road, or is there a purpose to this that we don't know about? Stephen Moore.
You don't know about it. He wants to get a deal.
Yeah, this is a positive development, a big positive development. I mean, there's no question the Europeans blinked. As I always say, the only thing the EU member countries can agree on is they don't want to pay their NATO dues. But it's hard to get – the problem is, Scott Besson has pointed this out. How many countries are in NATO? Like 18, 20, 25? I can't even remember. They keep adding countries. But it's like, trying to herd cats, trying to get them all to agree on something. And that makes getting a deal tough. But it is true that the Europeans place a lot of tariffs and a lot of non-tariff trade barriers on American products, whether it's our agricultural products or our manufactured products or our technology. So it's important we get a better trade deal with the Europeans. And the fact is they blinked over the weekend. They said, well, we'll come to the table. And that was a big development. The market loved it. We've seen a big run-up in stocks in the last few days. So I think that was a very positive development. And I'm not a big tariff guy, as you guys know, but if Trump can actually get the Europeans to reduce their tariffs, that's a positive thing for everybody.
Steve Moran, who's the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, was on Fox Business with Liz Klayman, and he said Americans won't bear the brunt of tariffs. Are you willing to stipulate to that statement?
What is that? I'm not sure what he means by that.
Well, hear him out. Here he is.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think that in the long run Americans are going to bear the burden of these tariffs at all. I think that's completely false. Because we didn't experience any macroeconomic inflation as a result of the 2018-2019 tariffs. There was zero sign of a drag on economic growth, zero sign of macroeconomic inflation. And if you look at the inflation to date, we've been raising tariffs since the first day of this administration, and there's no sign of inflation thus far.
I mean, 2017 was metals, aluminum, it was steel, it was narrower.
China, 2018, 2019. China.
Narrower still. This is 10% across the board.
And let me tell you why. Okay. The reason why is because American importers have flexibility over where they buy from. They're currently buying from China. They don't have to buy from China. They could buy from any number of other countries that we strike trade deals with that treat us better.
But Donald Trump just said Friday, I don't want Apple even making anything.
The Apple thing we've already discussed. But I mean, I understand he's the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, so he has to toe the party line. But I don't agree with that statement just in terms of basic economics.
Well, it's funny. What he said is generally true. It is true that we had some tariffs in Trump's first term, and we didn't have much inflation at all. And it's also true that inflation. I actually was wrong on this. I thought you'd see a big bump up in inflation because of the tariffs this year, but so far there really hasn't been a big bump up. Now, the fact is that over the last 40 years, we've had in America pretty low, moderate inflation. Especially from the end of the 1970s. And one of the major reasons for that we've been able to keep prices low in this country. There are two factors that have really driven down prices. You know what they are, Dan or Amy?
What? Productivity.
Well,
energy costs.
Productivity, technology. Technology is dramatically, like computer costs and all those are down like. The price of those things are down like 80% of the last 40 years. Talk about deflation. And the other factor that has really lowered prices has been imports. So imports have gone at 1/3 the rate of increase as things made domestically. So free trade and technology have been the biggest forces holding down prices down. And so that's why having an imports can be a good thing because they make things. If China's going to sell us T-shirts and computer chips for 1/3 the cost than they make here, why not buy them?
Well, I understand that's Scott Besson's point that he makes. We don't need to be the world's maker of T-shirts.
Exactly, he was exactly right about that.
I know.
He was exactly right.
I know, but I mean. The tariffs just one variable here, but the way he makes it sound is like a tax reduces the price or has no impact on price, and that's not true.
That's not true.
And by the way,
put a tax on something, you're going to pay more for it. You're exactly right about that.
And the other thing is, some importers have flexibility, and some have a lot less flexibility. I know a number of importers that it's not so easy to flip the switch and import from Vietnam or Singapore. So I'm just it's a little bit of a Pollyannish statement that he made.
Here's the way we're going to win this trade war. We need Amy to stop buying those $3 T-shirts from China.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's I'm with stupid and then pointing to me.
A little bit more, Amy, for T-shirts if they didn't come from China.
I can't stand T-shirts. Don't get me started on T-shirts. Every time somebody hands me a T-shirt, I put it right to the Goodwill or Salvation Army. Even yours, then, that says Proft University. I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Gift it to somebody.
Thank you.
Who's less fortunate.
I know those damn Proft T-shirts are made in China.
Yeah.
Are they? I'm going to go check the label. And the left is making a big deal because Pete Hegseth wore a jacket with an American flag that lined the inside, and it was made in Thailand. So they did a whole segment about that. I'm like, God, how desperate are you to try and make Republicans look bad?
I know we're running to the end of the segment, but the other problem is, for people like me, I don't want to buy stuff from China. But have you noticed it's hard to? A lot of them don't have a label on where the stuff was made anymore.
Yeah.
Just a cheap fake.
Steve Moore, economist, author of The Trump Economic Miracle and the Plan to Unleash Prosperity Again. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, guys, have a great week. Take
you
care.
too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Virago is fending off viruses and making America healthy again.
Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Huber. I'm one of the co-developers of Virago, the immune enhancement cocktail. Virago